Alright everyone, it's time for Occult Literature, video number 112, Lore of the Unicorn by Odell Shepard. An interesting work, 216 pages in the format I used. It's actually around 300 in its original format. In order to keep the page count lower so that the cost doesn't actually skyrocket, you have to do a little bit of intriguing formatting on CreateSpace. As always, link in the description to my edition of this work on Amazon. Second link to my books blog if you're interested in cryptozoology, folklore, mythology, the more academic side of coverage of such things. I have many other works available on a range of topics, and you can browse at your leisure. There are 9 categories now on my books blog, and there will be 10 fairly soon. I'll update that in the near future as I work through some other releases. This particular work is strictly rational in nature. That is, it's a historical look at the unicorn as mythological. It doesn't go into, concluding that there's some sort of a lost unicorn wandering around in Tibet or anything else. As you may have seen in literature of a similar character only a few decades before this work. It's from 1930. And the copyright did lapse on this work. It was not renewed, and so it was out of copyright even, I think, 30 years ago, actually. It's interesting, though, and from my perspective as someone who's interested especially, my greatest area of interest within any folklore is in folk magic related to herbalism, to folk medicine and things of that nature. And this work actually covers the use of unicorn horn, especially within a medieval context, at fairly great detail, using dozens of different primary sources within those specific passages. Now, the unicorn horn, for instance, which could be a narwhal horn, it could be the horn of an antelope or a rhinoceros, as well as apparently in some cases petrified wood, or just like a regular cow horn that's been, in some way altered, and various things were passed off as unicorn horn at the time. Taken internally, it was said to be similar to a bezoar, which is a very real medical substance that's actually still used within a more homeopathic context. It's sort of a hairy stone in the stomach of a goat. There are similar things from deer, apparently, that were also used in the medieval era. Taken internally, either as a powder or a tincture, unicorn water, literally, and in other forms. It was said to counteract all poisons. Used externally, it was literally just placed in the presence of other things, especially foodstuffs or drink, and it was said that it would start perspiring. It would literally start to, steam or drip in the presence of poison. And so it was seen as a very, very white magic-y sort of agent, either in its whole form or when broken down into a tincture or a powder. And of course, the idea that eating a little bit of powdered antelope horn is going to save you from poison may not make a great deal of sense. Now, however, these were used within that spiritual context. It also covers symbolism. For instance, the symbol of the unicorn and the lion, things of that nature. And it renders it, unlike some rational works, this work doesn't delineate itself solely to the cause of looking at the unicorn within a biological context. Some works do. They would look at it, they'd say, well, it's literally nothing more than a misunderstood rhinoceros, a misunderstood narwhal, something of that nature. It goes further into the spiritual, the view of the unicorn as a sort of spiritual symbol or as an actual spirit within certain traditions. It doesn't limit itself, this particular work, to any time period. It covers antiquity, the medieval era, and what was then modern, the late colonial period. It also speaks of cultures that are widely disparate. We're talking the Hindu tradition of India. We're talking, medieval England or something of that nature, certainly Europe in general, African lore, and so forth. So it's a very, very interesting work. It is a full-length work, although in this format it cuts down the page length by, I believe, about 80 pages. And that was done specifically because of cost constraints. I don't want to release works that are not particularly competitive. It's much easier to do it in this manner. As always, additionally, I'd like to point out, because some people ask me, well, what's different about your editions? A lot of the editions that you find on Amazon that are inexpensive are facsimiles. They take an original text with all of its mistakes, all of its errors, especially printing errors. Oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes they're not properly formatted, and so the cost is low because it took no effort to create it. I go through my works line by line. I de-antiquate and modernize the language, because there are words that were used even 100 years ago that nobody, unless they have training in English, would even understand. Certainly, the modernization of spelling of certain words, especially in older English, there are extra U's or Y's added for no reason. The primary source quotes within this work have not been modernized, because those are primary sources that were used by Shepard in his work. So those have remained the same. That's still in some cases very, very old English. There's some French in there. Those had to be kept the same because they were in French in the original work. Additionally, formatting changes are always conducted within my editions. None of my releases have been facsimiles. That's what I pride myself on. That's part of the point of releasing these things in the first place. I wanted to release editions that weren't expensive, but also weren't shitty. That's essentially my goal in doing these. And I'm going to keep doing it forever. So, as always, link in the description to my edition of this work on Amazon. Again, second link to my books blog. There are also other categories of literature there. If you're into alchemy, if you're into the folk medicine, sort of weird chemical folklore side, you're going to find plenty of stuff there. If you're into grimoires, the more literal side of summoning and conjuration, I've got those too. There's a little bit of everything. That's about all. Peace out.